a couple of tables of statistics, and it would take too long to go through them. I'll try and pick out the key issues. So, forward. The subject, essentially, which I was asked to address was, is there the possibility of growing the regional airports faster than Dublin, which has been growing its market share now very strongly for quite a considerable amount of time. So I'm actually going to focus more on the Dublin traffic to show why it's incredibly difficult to capture the traffic which is currently going through Dublin. So as quickly as possible. The first thing is, I think the tourism industry in Ireland led the recovery from the recession, which was a very, very deep recession. The people of Ireland responded very, very well in climbing out of that recession. But tourism is an Irish success story, and aviation is a multifaceted Irish success story. Viewed from the regions, and by the way, I'm a Mayo man originally. I worked in Shannon, I worked in Cork, and I worked in Dublin. But I cover several points of the compass here. Dublin dominates the Irish economy, and unfortunately, from a regional perspective, that dominance is tending to increase. The Dublin region population is growing faster. Indeed, the fastest growing area in population terms is Fingal, the North County Dublin, which of course is the Dublin Airport location. So the regional traffic share is declining. I think we can move on from that. Now, the total passenger numbers, just very, very quickly, you can see that Dublin is increasing very rapidly. Cork declined for 7 straight years, ending in 2015. Some reasonable growth in Shannon, Knock and Kerry. And just to put it in perspective, and not to be too gloomy about the future, Martin Dully, God rest him, when he was chief executive of Aviation, recruited me to try and turn Cork around in 1984. It hadn't grown for 7 years. It had never made a profit, and he just wanted somebody to kickstart the engine. At that time, Cork Airport had approximately the same traffic as Kerry has today, half of the traffic that Knock has today. So you can see that even through hard times and difficult challenges, it is possible to look forward to growth, but not to be unrealistic about where the growth will come from. Again, that's just setting out the market shares. I don't think we need to dwell on it. This is the important bit. Dublin Airport's traffic mix is changing, and it's changing quite rapidly. Ironically, one segment of traffic that has collapsed by 90% in the last decade is one that actually benefited everybody else, which is domestic traffic. It was well over 800,000, and it dropped to just over 1/10 of that. So that damaged everybody else, because 845,000 traffic passengers in Dublin represented 845,000 passengers at the other airports as well. So the collapse of that, which is due to many factors, was damaging. So the traffic which is increasing rapidly is long haul. Transatlantic is increasing rapidly. Other long haul is increasing even more rapidly. And the fastest growing traffic segment of all is international transfers. And what they do, and by the way, that's growing even faster this year than it's been growing in the past. So I hope you can all see this, but international transfers grew from just under 200,000 in 2007 to 1.1 1.157 million in 2016, and it'll be very close to 1.5 million this year. Those international transfers underpin the profitability of transatlantic long haul, they underpin the profitability of the other long haul segments. So you can see rapid growth in transatlantic, very rapid growth in other long haul, collapse in domestic, and in fact UK and Europe both more or less, UK marking time, UK or continental Europe growing at a relatively modest pace. So the question that we have to ask ourselves in terms of policy and actions is, are the industry, is this outperformance driven by industry changes which cannot be modified or changed, regional disparities in economic development, or poorly thought through policies which can be changed, or other factors? And I think that certainly the industry changes, and I recognise what Peter said there, and we hopefully will be able to come back to that shortly, but the Dublin growth is driven by market dynamics, the international transfers, the long haul. These are things which cannot really be replicated at any other Irish airport. You can get a modest contribution, perhaps at Shannon, but I really don't see them being replicated anywhere else. However, if you've damaged Dublin, you've damaged tourism throughout the country. Dublin Airport, let's be face it, is way more important to Killarney than Kerry Airport. And damaging Dublin will not assist in the development of any of the other airports. And I say that because there's a real threat, judging by purely what I read in the papers, which you'll have read yourselves, to cohesive and strategic long-term growth from ill-thought-out experiments at Dublin Airport. They are a threat to everybody in the business, in my view. So it's important not to confuse damage to Dublin with opportunity for the regions. What can be done for the regions? Well, my view, after all those years in the business, is that you actually don't start with aviation. You start with what we've been listening to all morning. Air transport does not create new markets in short haul. You can certainly stimulate tourism with new long haul routes. I agree with Peter on that. A new route from China will stimulate business. Air services, in terms of short haul, air services serve the markets, they don't create them. A statistic that people find almost impossible to believe. You know, it's a Donald Trump moment for most people. But the average growth rate for air transport before the invention of low-cost carriers was higher in Europe for the 15 years. You can take 1991 as the birth of low-cost carriers in Europe. The 15 years before that and the 15 years after that, which is a period I have particular statistics on, you had lower compound average growth rate afterwards. In the United States, you can see the growth in the market share of low-cost carriers is coexistent with a decline in the average growth rate. People find that extremely hard to believe. There are many factors behind it, but it helps illustrate the fact that air transport basically serves markets. It doesn't create them. Now, in terms of what do we do then, I think we need targeted tourism promotion, the kind of thing that the Wild Atlantic Way has done, the kind of thing that the Greenway did up in Mayo. You need significant new products or packages coming out every couple of years, and I'm very impressed with what Fiona said this morning. I think that they're very much focused on the right things. We just needed to be focused on the regions, because I think Dublin runs the risk of turning into a Barcelona. When you can't make your way through Dublin, it would be counterproductive for tourism. So I think we should be unapologetic in asking that product development and promotion be focused on the regions. And the regions basically is anywhere outside the Pale. Now, this, I think, is easier than the table of statistics to show. By the way, the UK and Europe on this scale are so close together that the orange is actually two lines more or less close together. But you can see that the international transfers is the fastest growing group, and as I say, that's actually accelerated. And then other long haul this is on an index basis. Other long haul is the second fastest. Then you have transatlantic, Europe, and then the decline of domestic. However, transatlantic, we always tend to lump transatlantic in one pile. But it's interesting that the Canadian market over the last decade has outperformed the US market for the entire decade. And it's perhaps time that we began to differentiate a little bit more and focus a little bit more on Canada and the potential from Canada. I say I'm on orange. I was happy that Peter raised the issue of new generation aircraft. Excuse me. This is a chart which shows the aircraft mile costs and the passenger mile costs for a range of aircraft. And normally, a small aircraft will have much higher seat mile costs than a large aircraft. Now, why this is important is that if you're running Kerry Airport, or any of the regional airports really, and you're dealing with 200-seat aircraft, you're either dealing with very low frequency, or you're dealing with an aircraft that's simply too big to operate a route. So let's say Kerry Leeds is not going to be operated with a 200-seat aircraft. You're talking 150,000 seats a year on a daily basis. So one of the interesting developments, there are two airlines in Europe that operate the new Bombardier aircraft, which has by far the lowest aircraft mile costs and has seat mile costs. The 130-seat version has seat mile costs equivalent to the 737-800, which is extraordinary because it's a significantly smaller aircraft. Once that aircraft begins to penetrate the market, and I believe at the moment we have Air Baltic and Austrian are the two European airlines that operate the Bombardier. There's, I believe, a big new order on the way from a European airline. Be interesting if it was Ryanair, but probably not. It probably is Lufthansa on the basis that Austrian is a subsidiary of Lufthansa, and I see I'm on red, sorry. But that, I think, will open up the potential for a lot of new routes to the regional airports, because you can, by the way, you develop markets with frequency. If you have a morning and evening service on a route, you actually build business traffic in particular on that route. If you're serving a route 3 times a week because the aircraft is very large, you don't build the route on that basis. So these are the numbers behind that chart, but it just shows you that the plane mile cost for the CS 100 is these are dollars, Aviation deals in dollars, $7 an aircraft mile cost, whereas the 737-800 is 10. So it's about 40%, 35% more expensive per plane mile cost. So the risk for the airline in increasing frequency or serving a route with any level of frequency is much higher with these bigger aircraft. In the past, you got significantly lower seat mile cost by increasing the size of the aircraft. The game changer for the Bombardier is you get the seat mile costs on a much smaller airframe. So hopefully that's a ray of sunshine for the future of regional airports. Thank you very much.